Marvel's Phase 4 exists. Now, honestly, I could say a lot more on it, but in order to appeal to the widest net possible, I'm just going to leave it there. While some of the content is good and I think it gets dragged purely for being a part of Phase 4, a lot of it is flawed. The phase as a whole is riddled with very consistent problems, and so to say that this universe has entered a bit of a rocky phase is pretty justified. Phase 5 has to be big. With the Marvel Cinematic Universe having a dwindling reputation nowadays, it's in trouble, and the confidence from fans is at an all-time low. I won't say that it's unjust, but I do think that this was a bad thing in the sense that it created almost this negative outset for whatever film was to follow. Like, whatever film releases next was always going to be met with negativity from the beginning. It was going to be fighting an uphill battle. Just because of this trend that has come about of hating on Marvel movies, whether it be unjust or not. And that is exactly what happened with Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA. Now, before I get the people saying, this movie is awful, you're wrong, how dare you bother defending it, I would just like to clarify, I am about to defend this movie. I am also about to admit that it is flawed. However, while I remind you that everything you're about to hear in this video is solely my opinion and you're welcome to your own, I'm about to admit that I actually kinda like QUANTUMANIA. Spoilers are going to be rife in this video, and I apologise if you don't like looking at my face, but because of the availability of footage from QUANTUMANIA, you're kinda stuck with me for the majority of this video. Structurally, this one might also be a little weird purely because of the fact that there's not a whole specific order that I want to talk about things in. You know, there's stuff that I want to praise, there's stuff that I want to criticise, there's even certain elements that I want to do both with. I guess the whole general gist of this thing is just to highlight that I actually thought Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA was a pretty good movie. It's almost a solid one, but it just falls short, so allow me to explain. Now, I would like to address what is probably going to be my most controversial take in this entire video first. Let's just hit the nail on the head here. Yes, you could argue the first controversial take I had was liking the movie, but I mean specific parts within the film, and in this case I'd like to go no further than MODOK. Now, this thing right here has been ripped to shreds. The MCU's version of MODOK has been bullied to the point where the guy would have to deactivate his Twitter for a few days just to get the heat down, and even then, that probably wouldn't work. Is it great? No, not exactly, but I'm not going to sit here for a single second and say that this thing could have looked any better when I'm looking at what this character is. I will admit, while I think it's decent, he has the same issues as pretty much every other CGI character I've ever seen. The eyes look dead as hell. But come on, that's really the extent that I'm going to go to criticise the CGI work on MODOK, because it's not the worst, guys. I've seen the argument that Marvel could have used an animatronic or some other practical effect, and sure, you know, if you want to speak in hypotheticals, we can. This isn't something that Marvel has done for at least a while, if at all, to my knowledge. So why the hell are they going to start it now? Why is this the first CGI creation in these films I'm seeing an overwhelming outcry of, this should have been practical, they should have done a practical effect or an animatronic? I don't get it. I personally think we should have had a practical effect during the blip where we actually obliterated the bodies of people that were turning to dust, but you know, that's just me. There's also that age-old argument of it shouldn't have been a previous villain, it should have just been MODOK. No Darren Cross, just MODOK. And to that one, I say if you're not going to remix the source material or do something unique, why fucking adapt it in the first place? I get the whole idea of wanting to see your favourite things adapted page for page, but honestly nothing grinds my gears more than the complaint of, you know, this thing isn't exactly like what I've already consumed. You may disagree, you probably do, and I respect it, but let's move on. I've seen a very common complaint that this film is a bad conclusion to the Ant-Man trilogy. And this is one that I do disagree with, however I can completely see why people would think that. For me, this movie does a pretty good job of concluding this little trilogy that doesn't actually have all that concise a narrative flow. You know, they're also connected through the development of the characters, but in that regard, I think it does a solid job in rounding things off. At their core, the Ant-Man movies have always revolved around family, with a lot of what drives Scott being Cassie, and this is the film that has addressed that most arguably, because Cassie is in the middle of the danger this time. She's grown up since the last time we saw her, but it's still the same Cassie that Scott has always had as his main focus. This is a family movie more than anything else, so how does this one veer away from that whole dynamic? What, it's on a bigger scale, there's a bigger threat? So what? CGI is an interesting one because it's the first thing that I want to speak both positively and negatively on. Purely because while I don't think it deserves the slander it gets, I also don't think it's very great, and for a pretty lengthy stretch in the first part of the movie, it really struggles. It does drastically improve for the second half though. Compared to the first act where I was noticing a lot of little goofs here and there and weird visual things, the second and third act really clean up and don't really take that as much. I've already said that I don't think MODOK looks that bad, but overall while the CGI looks competent about 70% of the time, visually the movie is just flat. It's very dull, and you can make the cope that the quantum realm is in this dark spot in terms of being ruled by Kang, and I normally would do that, but for some reason I don't want to do it this time, purely because I think visually this film just really lacks that creative edge. And it's not even just a here and there thing, like that's from start to finish. Since the first Ant-Man movie, we've never really seen his character or his powers be used for the incredibly creative ways. Stuff like that leads the path for pretty interesting visuals. I'm thinking of the bathtub scene from the first movie. There's nothing interesting like that here. I think the closest thing to an interesting shot that we have is the scene with all of the Scots, and even then, that just doesn't really work for me. I think the lack of colour is a severe problem in this movie. It feels incredibly dull. That is the bottom line here, and the main thing that I wanted to get clear with this. Visually, this movie doesn't interest me in the slightest, and that is a big problem considering that this is angling itself with that sci-fi feel in a place we haven't seen before. Usually that opens the door to the likes of interesting visuals or appealing shots, but unfortunately we don't get any of that with Quantumania. It really does set the movie back quite a bit, I can't lie. This is probably the most hot and cold area for me. Actually, no, there's another one. Acting is a mixed bag here though. I think for the majority of it, it's a flat 5 out of 10. Most of the people do nothing wrong, but also do nothing to stand out. There's a lot of these characters that I just really feel nothing towards, and a lot of that comes towards the delivery of the lines and other things around them. Slightly ahead of that in terms of positivity is Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. Now, he fits this character perfectly. I don't think there's anyone else that could do it at this point, at least to the degree that he does. However, saying that, I don't think he's all that great here. Now, whether that's an issue with the script or Paul, I don't know. I can't answer that. But there are times in this movie where I felt really disconnected with his character, especially in terms of other films he's been in. In Quantumania, we see the endgame level of acting that Paul Rudd has, and we also have the level of, I don't know, something that he's been bad in. He isn't the reason that I wanted to discuss acting. He's a good performance. He is not the best performance of the movie or the worst performance of the movie, which are the final two that we have to talk about. So first up, we have Catherine Newton. Look, I'm a big fan of Catherine Newton. I love her in Freaky. I think she's great in that. She's also pretty good in... I swear I've seen her in something else. Paranormal Activity 4. She was good in that as well. Lady Bird, she was fine in Detective Pikachu, but we're all allowed one blip. But I don't know, she just really doesn't do anything to win me over on her portrayal of Cassie here, and that was something that was very, very necessary for her to do, considering that this is now the third recast of this character, with the third one being really unnecessary. Which really sucks because in this movie we probably see less emotion from Cassie in the entire runtime than we do in her 5 seconds of screen time in Endgame. Now, I am not fully closing the door, I would like to make that clear. I am more than welcome to the idea that in the next film that Catherine Newton is in as Cassie, that she will completely blow the ballpark, she will be amazing. I'm all for that. I would love that personally. I think it's very possible. But now I want to talk about the real MVP of this movie, Kang. Or more importantly, Jonathan Majors and his portrayal, because Kang isn't exactly in my good books. Jonathan Majors rocks. Honestly, if you weren't a fan of his portrayal of Kang from Loki, and it's still not doing it for you here, this is the one time I'm going to tell you that I think you're wrong. He absolutely devours his screen time here. I think every second he's on screen, he commands it, he's demanding the shot, he's so powerful, and you really feel that through the way that he carries himself. The way in which Kang fails is the character itself. Now, I cannot speak for the entire saga because obviously we haven't seen it all yet. I can only speak on what we've seen so far, and from what we've seen, I am mildly concerned that we might be in for another Thanos problem. I covered this more in depth in a video I made a few years back. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that one out. But to quickly break it down, I believe that Thanos lost any depth he had as a character during his battle in Avengers Endgame, because the Thanos we'd actually seen have development was dead. The Kang perspective isn't entirely the same, but I do worry that they'll fail to make us really care if we're getting different versions of Kang with every time we see him. I would have liked this to be the big bad Kang, because right now it's feeling more like the whole idea of, if you can continuously just bring different versions of characters, where are the stakes? It would have been so incredibly easy for them to keep Kang alive at the end of QUANTUMANIA, and in fairness, there's still no concrete proof that he's dead. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp at its core is a pretty fun movie. It's heavily flawed, and you can probably see that in the way that I've talked more about negatives than I have positives in this video, but I still don't hate it. You can call it a shift in my standards after a few too many mediocre to garbage installments, but I can't hate this movie because I enjoyed it. I'm not going to side with all these people who are throwing shit at the film, because even though I agree with some of their points, I disagree with a lot of others, and above all else, I enjoyed this movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA is a good movie. In my opinion, of course. If you do disagree, feel free to let me know why. I'd love to, hear your perspectives of it in the comments below, against any of the points I've made today or against anything that I haven't talked about in this video. Just remember and keep it respectful, please. If you can do that, we're all in for a fun time. Hello, I just wanted to quickly drop by to give a massive thank you to you if you have watched to this point in the video. It means a lot, and if you want to see more content like this, then please leave a like or share it with your friends, as that's the sort of thing that lets me know that this is the sort of stuff you want to see in the future. If you are new around here and you've liked what you've seen, then you can subscribe so you don't miss out on future stuff when that drops as well. A big thank you to everyone currently on screen who continue to help Media 13 produce great content. I would not be able to do it half as well without these people sometimes. If you're at all interested in my thoughts on a film that hasn't been covered on this channel, feel free to also check out the likes of my TikTok and my Instagram, because I also post reviews there for films that don't necessarily get full videos here. You can find links to all of that in the description down below, as well as on the screen right now you'll see the usernames. But yeah, one more time, just thank you so much for watching this video. Again, feel free to share if you enjoyed it, as it helps spread the word. And I will see you all in the next one.